The crowd inside the gym buzzed with energy as fighters prepared for their evening matches. Sweat glistened under the bright lights, and the sharp sound of gloves hitting pads echoed through the air. In the corner stood a woman who looked completely out of place among the crowd of muscular athletes. Her name was Maya. She wore a faded hoodie, old sneakers, and her hair was tied back loosely, as if she had just come from running errands instead of preparing for a fight. Some of the fighters snickered quietly when they saw her name appear on the roster for the next sparring round. They whispered to each other thinking, she must have signed up by mistake. The head trainer, a tall man named Coach Reed, raised an eyebrow when he saw her step into the ring. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked with a doubtful tone. Maya simply nodded, adjusting her gloves calmly, her expression steady and unreadable. Across from her stood Leo, the gym's rising star, a confident fighter known for his powerful kicks and fast reflexes. He looked at Maya and smirked. "This should be quick," he muttered under his breath. The bell rang, and the crowd leaned forward, waiting to see the mismatch unfold. Leo circled her confidently, throwing light jabs as if testing her reaction. Maya barely moved. She watched him silently, her eyes calm like still water. The spectators laughed, thinking she was too scared to fight back. But Coach Reed noticed something in her stance, something quiet but controlled. Leo lunged forward, throwing a fast right hook, expecting her to flinch. Instead, Maya stepped aside with flawless timing, her movements smooth and effortless. The punch cut through empty air, and before Leo could reset his balance, Maya's leg snapped upward like lightning. Her foot connected with his chest with a clean, precise kick that echoed through the gym. Leo stumbled backward, crashing into the ropes, eyes wide in disbelief. The entire gym fell silent. No one had even seen the movement clearly. It was too fast, too clean, too perfect. Maya stood still, her breathing steady, her posture relaxed, like nothing had happened. Leo blinked, trying to process what had just taken place. Then he gave a small laugh of disbelief, rubbing his chest. "What was that?" he said, half joking, half amazed. Coach Reed stepped closer, watching Maya carefully. "You trained before, didn't you?" he asked. Maya gave a small smile. "Just a little here and there," she said softly. Whispers began to spread through the gym. Someone whispered that her movement looked like professional kickboxing. Another swore they had seen her fight years ago in a different city. But Maya ignored all the talk. She simply bowed slightly to Leo and stepped out of the ring as quietly as she had entered. The next fighter in line hesitated, now suddenly nervous to take their turn. Coach Reed called after her, "Maya, wait up." She paused near the edge of the mat, turning her head slightly. He looked at her with new respect, his voice quieter. "Now, where did you learn to kick like that?" Maya glanced around the gym, then back at him. "It's been a long time since I trained seriously," she said softly. "Just needed to see if I still could." She started to leave, but Leo stood up and called out, "Hey Maya, that was incredible. Spar with me again sometime." The crowd nodded in agreement, clapping softly as she smiled politely and waved. No one laughed at her anymore. As she walked toward the exit, the whispers grew louder. Who was she? Where did she come from? Even Coach Reed couldn't stop thinking about the precision of that single kick. It wasn't luck, it was mastery. Maya stepped outside into the cool evening air, pulling her hoodie tighter around her shoulders. She could still hear the muffled sounds of the gym behind her. She smiled faintly, remembering another time, another ring long ago, when she used to fight under a different name. But that was before everything changed, before she disappeared from the sport completely. And now here she was again, drawn back to the ring by something she could not quite explain. The fire she thought had gone out was still burning deep inside her. And though she had only shown a glimpse of it tonight, she knew this was only the beginning. The next morning, the gym was full of whispers about Maya. Everyone was talking about the quiet woman who had sent Leo flying with one clean kick. Some said it was luck, others said it was skill, but no one could deny that she had something special. Coach Reed sat in his office, sipping his coffee, while watching the security footage from the match. He replayed the moment in slow motion, studying her movements frame by frame. There was no wasted motion, no hesitation. Her form was flawless, her timing perfect. This was no amateur, he murmured to himself. She fought like someone who had trained for years. Just then Leo walked into the office, his chest still sore, but his pride more bruised than his body. "Coach, you saw that kick, right? She moved like a pro. I barely saw it coming." Reed nodded slowly, his eyes still on the screen. "I saw it, Leo, and I think we might have underestimated her big time. Out in the gym, Maya returned quietly, wearing the same faded hoodie and calm expression. Everyone stopped what they were doing for a moment. Some nodded respectfully, others simply stared in curiosity. Maya smiled politely and began stretching on the mat as if nothing had happened. Leo walked over, rubbing the back of his neck. "Hey Maya, about yesterday, you really caught me off guard," he said with a sheepish grin. She looked up and smiled slightly. "You did fine, Leo. You just got a little too confident." He laughed. "Yeah, guess I needed that reminder." Coach Reed approached them both. "I was watching the tape," he said evenly. "You've got serious technique. Maya, care to tell me where you trained?" Maya paused for a moment, then looked down, tying her shoelace carefully. "It's been a while," she said softly. "I used to compete before I got hurt." Reed raised an eyebrow. "Compete where?" She hesitated, then replied, "International circuit, mostly kickboxing, and a little bit of Muay Thai, before the accident." Leo's eyes widened. "Wait, hold on, you mean like professional fights?" Maya gave a quiet nod. "I stopped after my last match in Bangkok, haven't been in a ring since." The gym went silent for a moment as the realization spread among them. The quiet woman they had laughed at yesterday wasn't just a random beginner. She was a former international fighter. Reed crossed his arms, studying her thoughtfully. "You plan on staying around here?" Maya shrugged. "Maybe. I just wanted to see if I still had it." "You do," Reed said simply. Then, after a pause, he added, "If you're interested, I could use another trainer, someone who knows real discipline." Maya looked at him, surprised. "Me train others? I don't know if I'm ready for that." Reed smiled slightly. "Just think about it. We could use someone like you around here." As the day went on, Maya sparred lightly, with a few of the newer students giving them quiet pointers, adjusting their stance, showing them how to block properly. Her movements were smooth, her words calm and encouraging. Even the toughest fighters found themselves listening closely when she spoke. By the end of the session, several students gathered around her, asking for advice about balance, breathing, and focus. Maya answered them with patience, her calm energy filling the gym with a quiet kind of respect. From the corner, Leo watched her with admiration, whispering to another fighter, "She's the real deal, man. I've never seen anyone move like that." Outside, the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the glass walls of the gym. Maya wiped her forehead and sat down on the edge of the mat, watching the others train. She hadn't expected to feel this again, the rhythm of the gym, the sound of gloves hitting pads, the rush of energy in the air. Something deep inside her stirred a spark that had been buried for years. As she sat there lost in thought, Coach Reed approached her again, his voice calm but firm. "You know, Maya, there's a local tournament coming up in 3 weeks. Her head turned slightly, a hint of curiosity in her eyes. "I'm not asking you to fight," he continued. "I just think maybe you should see it. Maybe it'll remind you of what you're capable of." Maya gave a faint smile. "I'll think about it," she said quietly. But deep down, a part of her already knew the answer. That night, Maya lay awake, staring at the ceiling of her small apartment. The faint hum of the city drifted through the window, but her mind was far away, lost in old memories. She remembered the roar of the crowd, the bright lights, the feeling of the mat beneath her feet, and the rush of adrenaline that came with every fight. She had tried to leave that world behind after the injury, after everything that happened, but it had never truly left her. The sound of a kick striking the pad outside echoed in her mind again and again, like a heartbeat calling her back. By morning, she had made her decision. When she walked into the gym later that day, Coach Reed immediately noticed the fire in her eyes. "You've been thinking about the tournament, haven't you?" he said with a knowing look. Maya gave a small nod. "I don't want to enter officially," she said. "I just want to train for it quietly like I used to." Reed smiled. "I can work with that," he said. "Meet me at 6 tomorrow morning. We'll start fresh." Leo overheard them and grinned. "You're really doing this, Maya? That's awesome. Maybe I can help too." She laughed softly. "I thought you'd had enough of my kicks already." He chuckled. "Maybe, but I learn fast." The next morning, the gym was quiet and cool, the air crisp with the smell of new mats and cleaning spray. Maya stood barefoot in the center of the ring, stretching as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the windows. Coach Reed watched her form, every motion deliberate, every breath steady. She was built for this. Her body still remembered what her mind had tried to forget. They began with simple drills, footwork, timing, balance, but even in those small movements, Reed saw the precision of a seasoned fighter. Her body moved with instinct, her eyes focused, her breathing perfectly measured. Hours passed without her losing rhythm or energy. she was in her element again. When Leo arrived later, he stopped by the doorway just watching her move with quiet awe. She flowed like water, graceful and controlled each kick, landing exactly where she aimed it. Reed finally called for a break, handing her a towel. "You're sharper than most of the pros I've seen in years," he said. "You sure you're not thinking of actually competing?" Maya smiled faintly, wiping sweat from her brow. "I'm not sure, yet I just want to feel ready again, whatever that means." Over the next week, she trained daily, each session drawing more attention from the other fighters who began showing up early just to watch her practice. Even the most confident among them looked humbled by her discipline and calm. But Maya never showed off. She taught them quietly when they asked. She encouraged them when they struggled. She treated every fighter as an equal. Coach Reed could see how her presence was changing the atmosphere of the gym. The arrogance was fading, replaced by focus, respect, and quiet determination. One afternoon, Leo approached her between rounds. "Hey Maya, I heard the tournament organizers still have one open slot for the women's division." Maya looked up, surprised. "I thought registration was closed." "It was," Leo said, "but Reed talked to them. They'd make an exception if you wanted in." Maya fell silent for a long moment, her eyes drifting to the ring where other fighters were sparring. Her hands tightened slightly on the edge of the mat, the old fire flickering stronger in her chest. She could almost feel the energy of the crowd again, the sound of the bell, the rhythm of combat. Reed walked over, giving her a steady look. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone, Maya, but sometimes the best way to move forward is to step back into the ring." She took a slow, deep breath, her gaze locked on the center of the mat. "Maybe," she whispered, "maybe it's time." The next few days passed in a blur of sweat, focus, and determination. Maya trained harder than she had in years, her body waking up to the rhythm it once knew so well. Each morning she arrived before sunrise, her footsteps echoing softly through the empty gym. Coach Reed watched her push through every session with quiet intensity, no complaints, no hesitation, just steady focus. Leo joined her sometimes, trying to keep up, but even he had to admit she was on another level entirely. She moved with purpose, every punch, every kick precise and efficient, no wasted motion, no unnecessary power, just pure technique. When she rested, she sat cross-legged on the mat, eyes closed, breathing slow and deep, finding her calm between storms. Reed often stood nearby, shaking his head in disbelief. She's not just fighting to compete, he thought. She's fighting to remember who she is. One evening after training, the gym lights dimmed as most of the fighters packed up to leave. Maya stayed behind, shadowboxing in silence, her silhouette moving across the mat under the soft glow of a single hanging bulb. Reed approached her quietly, leaning on the ropes. "You're ready, Maya," he said gently. "You know that, right?" She paused, lowering her hands, her chest rising and falling with slow, controlled breaths. "I don't know if anyone is ever really ready," she replied softly. "I just know I can't walk away this time." Reed smiled a little. "That's the fighter I remember from years ago," he said. "I saw you fight once in Tokyo. You were electric. I never forgot it." Maya looked at him, surprised. "You were there?" He nodded. "Front row. I knew you had something special back then. I just never thought I'd see you here again." She gave a faint smile. Funny how life circles back sometimes. The next morning, Reed posted the list of confirmed competitors for the upcoming tournament on the gym wall. When the fighters saw Maya's name printed at the bottom of the list, the gym went quiet. Then came the whispers again, only this time they weren't mocking, they were full of awe and curiosity. Leo grinned ear to ear. "You really did it, Maya, you're back in the game." Maya laughed softly. "I guess I am, but it's not about winning this time, it's about finishing something I left undone." Training intensified as the tournament drew closer. Reed pushed her with precision rounds, endless drills, and sparring against fighters of all styles. Her old instincts returned, sharper than ever, her reactions quicker, her balance unshakable. Even Leo started to struggle keeping up with her speed and timing. The night before the tournament, the gym was empty and silent. Maya stood alone in the ring, running her hands along the ropes. She could almost feel the ghosts of her past matches in the air around her, the cheers, the noise, the lights, the pressure. For a moment, she closed her eyes and breathed in deeply, grounding herself in the present. This time, it was different. This time, she wasn't chasing victory, she was chasing peace. Reed entered quietly from the side door and leaned against the ropes, watching her in silence. "You ready for tomorrow?" he asked finally. Maya leaned back in her chair, sipping her coffee, watching him with a thoughtful gaze. You didn't come here just to flatter me, coach. What's in the folder? Reed smiled, faintly opening it and sliding a few papers across the table. Tournament invitations, contracts from sponsors, even an offer to train professional fighters overseas, all of it neatly stacked and waiting for her name. She stared at the papers silently, for a long moment, her fingers resting lightly on the edge of the top page. You know I didn't come back for fame, she said softly. I came back to find peace. I know, Reed said. That's why they're offering these opportunities, Maya. They see something real in you, not just skill, but the kind of calm that can't be taught. Maya looked down at the papers again, her reflection faintly visible in the glossy surface. There was a time she would have said yes without hesitation, chasing every fight, every challenge, but now she understood that strength wasn't about chasing, it was about choosing. She took a slow breath and looked up at Reed. I need time to think about this, she said quietly. Reed nodded. Take all the time you need, but whatever you choose, don't walk away from what you've rediscovered. When he left, she stood by the window, watching him disappear down the street, the morning sun glinting off the cars below. Her mind swirled with questions, possibilities, and something else, something deeper than ambition or fear. It was purpose, the quiet pulse of it steady in her chest, reminding her that she had stepped back into the world she once loved, not by accident, but because something inside her had called her back. And now that she had answered that call, she could feel that the story was far from over. Days passed, and the buzz around Maya only grew stronger. The videos of her fight spread across every platform, and soon her face became familiar to people who had never stepped foot in a gym. Everywhere she went, she heard whispers. That's her, the one who ended the match with one kick, the woman who silenced the whole arena. Maya kept her hood up most of the time, avoiding the attention. She never cared for fame, and she certainly didn't fight for it. Still, part of her couldn't deny the strange energy that came with it, the sense that her quiet strength had awakened something in others too. One evening she returned to the gym, the same one where she had first been laughed at and doubted. The same walls that had echoed with mockery now felt heavy with silence and respect. As she stepped inside the room, filled with the familiar scent of sweat and matte polish, everyone turned their heads, eyes widening slightly before parting to make space for her. Leo grinned from across the room, holding his gloves. You sure know how to make an entrance, Maya. She smiled faintly and set her bag down. I came to train, not to make an entrance. Coach Reed stepped out from the office, wiping his hands with a towel. He gave her a nod. Good, you're here. We've got something to discuss. She tilted her head, curious. What's going on? He motioned toward the far side of the gym, where a tall man stood talking to a few of the younger fighters, his posture confident, his expression sharp. That's Daniel Cruz, Reed said quietly, national champion. He's training here for a few weeks before his next international match. Maya studied the man for a moment, recognizing the focused intensity in his eyes, the kind that came from living and breathing the sport. Reed continued, he saw your match last week and he asked for a sparring session with you personally. Maya blinked, surprised he asked for me. Reed nodded. He said he wanted to understand how someone could deliver a kick that precise under that much pressure. Maya hesitated, then let out a soft laugh. I'm not sure he'll like the answer. She tied her hair back and walked toward Daniel, the sound of her bare feet soft against the mat. When he turned to face her, there was no arrogance in his gaze, only curiosity and quiet respect. You're Maya, he said, extending a hand. I've been looking forward to this. She shook his hand firmly. Likewise, Daniel. I hear you're one of the best. He smiled. Maybe, but after watching your match, I think titles don't mean much anymore. They stepped into the ring together, the crowd of trainees gathering around in hushed anticipation. For a long moment, they simply faced each other, reading movements, breathing steady, neither rushing to strike. Then Daniel moved first, a sharp, controlled jab, testing her speed. She countered easily, shifting her weight with fluid grace, her eyes never leaving his. The sound of their steps echoed across the room, each movement measured like a dance between patience and precision. Maya could feel it, the rhythm returning to her body, the deep calm that guided her through every motion. Daniel smiled faintly, as if realizing what he was truly up against. You fight like someone who doesn't have anything to prove, he said between strikes. Maya moved past his guard with a smooth motion, her foot stopping just inches from his chest, her voice calm. I've already proved it to myself. The room went silent again, the same way it had that night when she ended the match with a single kick. Reed watched from the side, arms crossed, pride flickering in his eyes, while Leo muttered under his breath, "I told them she was different." Maya stepped back, lowering her stance and giving Daniel a respectful nod. "Nice control," she said. He laughed softly, shaking his head. "That was incredible, Maya. No wonder everyone's talking about you." But Maya's gaze drifted past him to the door where two men in dark suits had just entered, carrying an air of quiet authority. Reed noticed them too, his expression tightening slightly as they approached. The taller one spoke in a low professional tone. "Maya, Lee, we need a word with you. It's about an upcoming event, and we believe your presence might be important." Maya exchanged a quick look with Reed, who gave a subtle nod. She could see in his eyes that whatever this was, it wasn't just another tournament. It felt bigger, deeper, like something waiting just beyond the edge of what she thought her journey would be. Maya followed the two men into the small office at the back of the gym, the noise of training fading behind her. They closed the door quietly, one of them placing a sleek folder on the desk before stepping back, allowing the other to speak. "Miss Lee," the man began in a calm tone, "I'm with the International Combat Federation. We oversee global martial arts competitions and athlete development programs." Maya crossed her arms, watching him carefully. "What does that have to do with me?" He opened the folder, revealing a set of documents and photographs, each stamped with the Federation's emblem. "We've been reviewing footage from last week's match and from your sparring session with Daniel Cruz," he said. "Frankly, what you displayed isn't just skill, it's mastery of discipline under pressure, something rare even among professionals." Maya glanced down at the papers, then back up, unimpressed. "I'm not interested in fame or sponsorships." The man smiled slightly. "That's exactly why we want you," he said. "We're launching a new initiative, a mentorship program for young women in underfunded training centers across the country. We need someone who can inspire, not just by talking, but by example." Maya's expression softened, her eyes flickering with something deeper than pride. "You want me to teach?" she asked quietly. "Not just teach," the man said. "We want you to lead, to remind people why the ring isn't just for those who shout the loudest, but for those who move with purpose." She took a slow breath, thinking of the girls who watched her video with awe, of the messages she had ignored from those saying they finally felt they could belong. Maybe this was the real reason she came back, not to win medals, not to prove herself, but to light a path for others who were told they didn't belong. She reached out and took the pen, signing the papers with a steady hand. When she looked up, the two men smiled and shook her hand. "Welcome aboard, Miss Lee. The first training center opens next month. We'll handle everything else. You just keep being you." After they left, she sat quietly for a moment, the late afternoon sun pouring through the window, painting golden streaks across the floor. Coach Reed stepped inside after a while, leaning against the doorway. "So what was that about?" Maya smiled softly. "Something new, coach, something worth fighting for." He nodded slowly. "I had a feeling it would come to this. You've always been meant for more than just the ring." She stood and walked toward the window, watching kids running outside on the street, their laughter echoing faintly through the glass. They said she didn't belong in the ring, and maybe she never truly did, not in the way they thought. Because her place was never just inside those ropes, it was out here in the world, showing others that strength wasn't about power or victory, it was about belief. And as the evening light faded into soft twilight, Maya felt peace settle deep in her chest, the quiet kind that came from finally finding where she was meant to be. For the first time in years, she smiled, not from triumph, but from understanding. Her journey had come full circle, and though the world now knew her name, she remained the same simple woman who had walked into that gym alone once before. Only now she wasn't alone anymore.